This is a juicy grilled lamb kebab, and it's making me wonder why Middle Eastern grills taste so good. Is it the cuts of meat and how you prepare them? Is it the ingredients in the marinades and the spices you use? Or is it just about how you cook them? I didn't know, and I was sick of dry and underwhelming grills, so I did loads of research until I figured it out. First, I needed to understand why the grills that I order at restaurants are so much better than the ones I make at home. So after eating a copious amount of kebabs over the past weeks, here's what I found. First, the meat is incredibly juicy and super moist. Second, the meat is really tender with a nice char on the outside. And third, every bite has an explosion of flavour. With that in mind, let's narrow our focus and define the different kind of kebabs that exist.
The first kind of kebabs are Kofta Kebabs, which are made from minced meat mixed with spices and other ingredients. These are versatile kebabs which work best in sandwiches. The next kind are Shish Kebabs, and these kebabs are made from chunks of boneless tender meats. They're perfect for serving on the go and can be eaten without any utensils. The other kind of kebab is what I like to refer to as whole grills, which are larger cuts of meat, sometimes with the bone in. These are the kebabs we're going to focus on today as they're the easiest to make. We'll then discuss the other two kinds in the next few videos.
So if you're making grills, there are certain meats where using a premium cut will give you juicier, tender results.
Grilled chicken recipes are quite easy because you can use breast or thigh meat interchangeably, and they should cook to similar textures, although chicken thighs are juicier than breast. In terms of lamb, you can use most cuts for kebabs, however lamb chops or tenderloin will be softer and juicier. They are expensive though, and so lamb shoulder cubes are a cheaper alternative. Just keep in mind that they need to be tenderized. For beef kebabs, you will have to use a premium cut of meat, as most cuts will have a tough texture when grilled. All the typical steak cuts work well, though I would recommend something with some good intramuscular fat like a ribeye. Finally, if we're talking about grilling vegetables, keep in mind that some vegetables have long plant fibres, and so they need to be cut against the grain so they don't end up stringy.
Beyond just using a good cut, you can also improve the texture of grills by tenderizing the meat. That can be done by pounding the meat with a hammer, which breaks up the meat fibres, but it can also be done using a tenderizing marinade.
Typically when we think about marinades, we consider their use as a vehicle for flavouring foods, but in the Middle East we also use them to tenderize tougher cuts of meat. That allows us to get softer grills from tougher cuts, while also making softer cuts incredibly delicate. This is done one of two ways, by creating an acidic marinade using acidic ingredients, or by the use of enzyme-based marinades using enzyme-laden ingredients. Acidic Middle Eastern marinades are commonly made using yogurt, lemon juice or vinegar, and even a combination of the three. Meanwhile, enzymatic marinades are usually made with onions, as they contain an enzyme that tenderizes protein. By using these ingredients in your marinades, you can soften tougher cuts of meat, but beware that you can also over-marinate your meat if you leave it too long.
Once you've marinated your meats, you'll need to grill them, and how you do that will have a significant impact on the end result. The method you use to grill directly affects how juicy and tender the meat is. Even the softest and fattiest cuts of meat can be ruined by cooking them too long or too hot.
The best way to cook any sort of kebab is to grill it over a barbecue, and I've only ever seen coal barbecues in the Middle East. We go out of our way to use coal or wood barbecues as they give the food a smoky flavour. Just look at this coal-fired rotisserie at one of my favourite restaurants in Egypt. If you'll be cooking on a gas barbecue or indoors at home, you need to maximise the charring on the food to make up for the lack of smokiness. Here's a technique we use to smoke foods at home in the Middle East, though I warn you that this is really bad for your health. After cooking food, we place a small vessel with oil in the midst of our food, then we drop in a red hot coal and quickly cover the food as the coal begins to smoke. After about 10 minutes of smoking, the food tastes like it just came off the grill, and that's a hack that works well for smoking pretty much anything. Just remember to open your windows.
Are you enjoying all this good barbecue advice? Well, you can thank our amazing patrons for that, and you can help us make more videos like this by joining them. Patreon.com/MiddleEats.
Another key factor that keeps the meat juicy is that we use radiant heat only when grilling. Traditional grilling involves placing meat on a metal grate over the coals, but when you do that, the hot grate spreads heat into the meat through conduction. That's why you end up with grill marks. Since metal is a great conductor of heat versus air, the areas not touching the grill will cook slower than those touching it. That leads to drier meat where it touched the grate, and also extra charring, which can sometimes ruin the flavour.
So first thing you need to do is get rid of your grate, and instead you'll cook the meat directly over the charcoal. To cook without a grate, you will need to get some long metal skewers. Flat wide skewers like these are the best kind for this method of grilling.
The skewers should fit from one end of your grill across to the other side, but if they don't, you can place some skewers sideways, which shortens the effective depth of your grill. Once you've got a fire going with your coal, wait until the coals are turning white around the edges. Spread them out in an even layer, then lay on the skewers so they're floating over the hot coals. The meat will be floating over what is effectively an outdoor charcoal oven, which will crisp up the outside while keeping the juices locked in. Every 60 seconds the food should be flipped over until it is cooked through and well charred. Just remember that the metal skewers will get hot, so don't burn yourself like I did. Because the skewers are flat, they're really easy to turn over, which gives you more control over how long you cook each side for. If you're trying to cook with rounded skewers, you'll find they just rotate endlessly and have no grip to rotate the meat. That makes it more likely some of the meat will burn, and you'll also rotate it less if it's difficult. There are also square skewers which make a smaller hole like the round ones, but they have an edge which gives them more grip, and they work well for cubes of meat.
If you don't have access to a grill and still want to cook these foods at home, you can do this.
You can load up skewers like you would for a barbecue, and then suspend them across a baking dish. Set your broiler or grill to high and place the dish as close to the heating element as possible. Rotate the meat every 3 minutes, and combined with the smoking technique from earlier, that should get you a semi-decent result from the comfort of your own kitchen.
Now with all that info, let's start to make some juicy, delicious and tender grills. The first one is Turkish chicken wings,
which are a little spicy but full of loads of umami flavours. To make the marinade, add 2 tablespoons of yogurt to a bowl, then add in 2 tablespoons of Turkish red pepper paste, or you can use tomato paste and 2 teaspoons of paprika. Add about 3 tablespoons of olive oil, then mix that together into a bright red slurry. Add 2 cloves of garlic, 3 teaspoons of sumac, 1.5 teaspoons of pul biber or Aleppo pepper, 1 teaspoon of Turkish oregano, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Add 1.25 teaspoons of salt, then mix that all together until you are left with something like this. Take a kilogram of chicken wings, then find the bump on the joint between the flat and the drum of the wing and slice on that flat side to separate your wings into 2 pieces. Once you've separated the wings into drums and flats, add them into the marinade and let your hands really work it into the wings. Give them a good squish with the marinade, then let them rest for at least 2 hours or up to 12.
The second marinade is for Egyptian style lamb chops, which are coated in an onion and parsley marinade that gives them a sweet herby flavour when grilled.
First, you need some good quality lamb chops with the bone and fat still attached. If the fat has this papery outer layer on the outside, then you'll need to remove it, and once you've done that you can manually tenderize the meat with a mallet. This was spring lamb, which is already incredibly tender, so I gave it only 2 to 3 hits, focusing mostly on the fat. I also had some lamb ribs and those got a bit of extra tenderizing. After that I laid them out flat, then I massaged plenty of our onion marinades into the chops. To make that I broke out a food processor and added in 400 grams of roughly chopped onions with 75 grams of fresh parsley. That needs to be blended together until well combined, so I also added a splash of water to make it easier to process. Once I had a beautiful and potent green mixture like this, I added the spices, which are 1 tablespoon of salt, half a tablespoon of paprika, 1 tablespoon of sumac, 1 tablespoon of pul biber or Aleppo pepper, half a tablespoon of black pepper and 1 teaspoon of cumin. That was blended until well combined into a fine mixture of onion, parsley and spices. The marinade will be enough for 3 kilograms of bone-in meat, like these lamb chops, and you want to get a very even coat all over the meat. I spread them out and massaged the mixture into both sides, and this is what it ended up looking like. You can do this recipe with most cuts of meat, and after a few hours of marinating it will really tenderize them. For these chops I packed them up and let them rest in the fridge overnight.
The third recipe we'll make are boneless whole chickens, which I did a full video about last year.
To make this you debone an entire chicken so that when you eat it there's absolutely no bones in your way. You can make the marinade in a food processor or blender by adding onions, garlic, lemon juice and white vinegar, then blending it all together until very finely minced. To season, add salt, sumac, oregano, black pepper and chili powder to give it a lightly spiced kick. Process that until very well mixed and you should have a marinade that looks like this. It's an easily customizable marinade and we just rubbed it into the chickens and let them marinate for up to 3 hours.
Once it's time to cook these kebabs, light up your coals and while they're heating prepare the skewers.
The meats have each been marinating for the right amount of time, which means they should be really juicy when grilled. Anything with an onion marinade like the chops and boneless chicken need the excess marinade scraped off so it doesn't burn while cooking. In terms of skewers, I'm going to use 2 square ones to stretch the lamb chops between them, though you can also use 2 flat skewers instead. Thread each skewer right next to the bones and through the middle of the chunkiest part of the meat. This is a lot easier to do 1 skewer at a time, and once you have a few chops on there, spread them out so they aren't all bunched up. For the wings I'm using flat skewers and I'm piercing the wings to slide them on. You want to place them so the flats are facing up or down rather than placing the skewer between the 2 bones. Once there's about 10 or so on the skewer, spread them out so they aren't squished against each other. They should end up looking something like this. Right before grilling, cut a couple of slits into the wings on both sides and then they're ready to cook.
When the coal is white hot, spread it out into an even layer and shorten your grill's depth with a horizontal skewer if you need to.
Add your skewers to the grill, leaving a little space between each one so they don't touch. Flip the skewers every minute or so to ensure they brown evenly and so that they don't cook too much on any one side. The meats will constantly drip fat and juices onto the coals below, which will cause flare-ups of smoke, giving the meat a smokier flavour. Sometimes though the fat can cause small fires, and you have to put those out, so spritz or pour a little water onto the coals and the meat to cool them down. Expect it to sizzle and get smoky when you do this, but it prevents the food from burning and keeps it from drying out. In total, I cooked the wings for about 8 minutes until they were browned all over, and I cooked the chops for about 10 until they looked like this.
How long they take will depend on how hot your barbecue is and how close the meat is to the coals, but you can definitely go visually. Just remember to rotate the meat often. Of course, as we live in London, our annual 33-minute barbecue allocation ran out, and it started raining on the cameras before I could show you how to grill the boneless chickens. I can however show you how juicy the grills are. The lamb is oozing in juices with perfectly cooked insides, while the wings are charred lightly and so moist. The boneless chicken meanwhile is charred all over and such a moist bite to eat. Now is your turn to make some of these kebabs and let me know what you think. If you're looking for more kebab recipes, check out this video over here.